Is anyone out there? Is anyone out there? Please, we need help. Almost out of food. I'm not sure how long we can keep them out. We need help.
Arise, minions, and welcome back to unMadeGaming. We're here. We're back. This is a show. Everyone's in the wrong cameras. I forgot how cameras work. I forgot how to stream. Is really the long and short of it. It was just one. It was just one person. We're here. You are Kitchens. We're here. We're back. This is not a standard episode, as you can tell by me not giving my standard spiel. I will say, if you like what we do here and you want to support the channel, Patreon, etc., click on the link down below. Click on the other link and join our Discord. Be a part of the community. Be a part of the conversation. All that fun stuff. This is a live after show / post-mortem for Alien, the series. Season 1 through Season 4. It is the series finale. We are done. This is the last you will see of these 4 characters. Technically, these 8 characters. But that is the last you'll see of any of us in this role. So we're going to go around and we're going to do a live version of our Patreon exclusive after show where we do our stars and wishes. And then we're going to sort of open the floodgates and take some cues, shove some A's up there, and Dot can tell you guys whatever she wants. I like the horrified faces when I say something sometimes. It just warms my cold dead heart. So let's start. Let's start with Meta for your stars and wishes, primarily for the last episode, and then we'll go into everyone's thoughts of the whole series, stretching back multiple years.
Was in particular a complete cluster in like the best possible way.
We have a muting issue right now.
It's fixed.
What?
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
It's me.
Okay.
It was
I
my
was
problem, not a
muted.
you
Gotcha.
problem.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, okay. Anyway, what I was saying was we had a whole clusterfuck of things to cover at our last after show, which obviously we didn't get to do it till today. So, where to begin? Obviously, I think one of my big stars will always be to Dot and the crew for just the whole cast really just knocking it home with all the RP and bringing your characters to life in such a way that we actually like gave a fuck about them, and then also were invested. At least I was. I guess I can't really speak for everybody else, but I was very invested in the outcome of their lives. And Dot for creating this insane web of narrative and piecing it all together with us to tell this huge story. So over many years, which is exceptionally hard to do. So that's a huge star for me with all that. I think specific scenes that one thing I actually wasn't I was expecting Barton to do something ridiculously stupid, but I didn't realize how stupid he would go at the very end. So I'll give a star to Mike for completely off the rails self-sacrifice and then just tormenting Kitchens with it, because that's what we do to our best friend. So that's
Listen, I got a little punch drunk at the 3-hour mark, and I didn't think that one through entirely. But you know, here we are.
Like there's Rin just sleeping peacefully, knowing in her mind she got Vince out there safe and sound with his family. She's like, she's okay with whatever comes next. And then there's Barton like, but wait, there's more. So I was taken aback by that, definitely out of character. I mean, Bub, your progression with Kitchens is insanity. Has been like, oh my gosh, so much fun to watch. And be just kind of a fly on the wall too, because a lot of those scenes didn't really involve Rin, but there were these moments, right? And I just think that that was such an excellent, well executed character progression on your part. So big star to you.
Thank you.
And Zach, holy crap. I remember, I know we're not talking about the whole season, but like just from the beginning to where we ended with Vince's character, you played him out so perfectly with this like evolution as well of like coming from out of a child into this leader. But he wasn't sure. Like it seemed like he almost wasn't sure if he wanted to be that leader at first. And then all these like little things happened, and then he kind of almost got forced into leading everything, right? And so I think that that was just such an amazing job. But you guys are great, and I love RPing with you guys and playing on these shows. So those are my stars for sure. Um, wishes. We left some things open, so I wish to hear from the viewers what they think actually happened with the engineers on the planet and all of that, and if Vince found out if you guys think that Vince found the eggs and all that and what happened. I'm just curious to hear people's theories, but yeah.
That is a good wish. Hell yeah. Okay, cool. We'll jump. Well, speaking of Vince, we'll jump right to Zach. So, Zach, what are your stars and wishes from the last episode?
I enjoyed that we got to fight some pirates. Though, to be honest, we kind of just kicked their asses. Like it was pretty dope.
I mean, we all kind of set a trap. We're like, okay, pirates, go ahead and go to the sea.
Yeah.
You go ahead. Just, you'll be just fine.
hmm I really enjoyed the scene between Rin and the pilot of that ship and sort of that struggle that was happening at the same time as what was going on with Vince and Kitchens and Barden. But yeah, no, I think I enjoyed how this last season became the culmination of this experiment, like our terrifying and strange attempt at creating something that maybe could control this beast, but also could in that way like hamper the plans that someone like Bishop has. And the fact that Kitchens and Barden actually pulled it off to a certain degree. I particularly enjoyed too, and was not expecting the sudden arrival of the engineers at the end of the episode. That was very cool, especially after having, I think after our second season of Alien, I was like, I'm really into this Alien thing now. I should probably watch more of the Alien movies. So I watched, I think it was Prometheus is the one I watched, where you first meet David and all that.
Yep.
And of course the engineers and a lot of that like deeper lore of everything. So as what a sort of not ironic, but what a sort of poignant bookend to our season to have something that one of those movies started with be the end of ours, in the form of that biological agent thing and the interaction between the biological agent that the engineers made and the one that Kitchens made. Yeah, I think honestly, the ending in totality was bittersweet. I wish there could be more. But I think where we left it all and I is great, and I could not have imagined a better ending for Vince. Luckily, I didn't die. The rest of you, I'm curious to hear if you thought if you are happy with, I mean, some of y'all were like, I want to go out in a blaze of glory, and I think Barden definitely did. But yeah, that lots of questions, lots of open ending to Barden and Rin as well. But yeah, that is, I think it was great. The whole 4 seasons, we'd have to go back and remind ourselves of all of the shenanigans that we were up to. The earliest notes that I even started taking were from October of 2022, which is still several episodes into either our first or second season. So yeah, there's a lot to go back. Also, we have, before I move on, without saying, of course, we have to mention Miss Magitech playing Sophie Quill, who came in. That was awesome. Even for the very brief time it was really refreshing to have a new person on the cast, and that dynamic, and having them play like another military-minded person. So that was really cool. And yeah, we'll probably talk more about the seasons in general once we've all given our stars and wishes. So I'll stop there. But my wishes would be, I only have one thing to say about what would maybe happen in the story after we end as my wish. I'd like to think that if Vince and Ace have a daughter, that they would name it Rin. That's all I'll say.
Aw,
Adorable.
I like that.
Adorable.
Well, that
Bub.
happens now.
Yeah, right. That's canonized. Bub, you're up next.
Great.
What are your stars and wishes?
Wish granted.
I'm yeah, I think I have to couple a few things here into 2 stars. So first star is a highlight spot for Dot for giving Kitchens an opportunity to reflexively exhaust some of his necessary stress on things that were impeding his success in the experiment, i.e. the pirates. And I have to give the rest of the cast stars in that same vein, because not a single one of them even remotely blinked at the fact that the synthetic, who is designed to be an absolute assistant to humanity, openly lied and plotted for the deaths of every pirate. And they were just like, what he said. That was a wild turn of events. It's like everyone accepted that we were at point break, and Kitchens was gone, or at least he was on that slope of like he's going gone, right? But I thought a lot, especially through COVID, about that last episode, and it's funny. After Vince flees the ship, right, and it's the rest of us. We're literally the cast of Red, retired, elderly, and dangerous. Like that's what that was. And somehow we managed in so many ways. But it was great. It was great. It was a great experience. It was definitely wild to see how influential birth can be on a synthetic through time. Like there were a lot. I'll admit there were a lot of moments where I was like, I don't know if Kitchens would take stress here after Dot gave it, but that was me thinking as Bub, because I'm not impacted by like the idea of pregnancy anymore. Like that's not a thing that it's like, oh, people have babies, but like as a synthetic, it's like, oh, that totally makes sense. That makes sense. Like thematically across the entire like Geiger-verse of Alien, that kind of thing fucks that, like they constantly fuck with the mind of synthetics like that. Like, yeah, you have an understanding of so many things, but you will never have the capacity for creating something original. And watching people even accidentally create something original is certainly enough to fracture that kind of mind. So, my stars,
It's just a good thing that I think Kitchens wasn't there for the actual birth, because there was always a possibility that y'all waited, that time could have passed, that we could have actually seen the birth of that child live on this show. It just depended on how y'all played it out, and that would have been a whole other can of worms for Kitchen to witness. Like,
it would have, but it also like it begs the question, right? Like, aren't there synthetics that are similarly designed to assist in the process of like birth and stuff like that?
yeah, it's their programming. But see, the David units weren't.
They weren't programmed for that.
No,
Yeah.
at least not your model. So in actuality, in Farilski, in the lore, right, what ends up happening is all the Davids, Bishop collects, and they put all the David's units in a freeze-dried state. Basically, they put them in a bin and keep them away. So after what happened with the first David one, the rest of them are hunted, found, and put in cold storage. That is canon. You can read that in the Alien book, the RPG book. I decided what happens if the David one found that container of David's, which is what happened in our story. So the Davids are clearly not programmed to say be able to do those things, where like another unit, like a medical unit, might be. But again, I was thinking back, I made some notes during the last episode, or like right before, because I was counting how many times Kitchens had kind of had his core operation reset. You have your original one. Then you have the one David tried to reprogram. Then
Yeah.
you have what happened when Desta pulled that
Desta.
one out and you tried to reset, like you basically started writing your own. And then the finding of the XX121 was again a rewrite in purpose. And it felt like it's like you do it too much to a computer drive. You try to reset its purpose and it's gonna crack around the edges. And every time was just a little bit more of a nip and a crack at Kitchens.
Yeah. I think my wish is I don't know if Kitchens dies. I don't think he dies. Just because of how he was designed, how he understands survivability on that existential crisis of a location that was just this fallout, courtesy of the engineers. So I think my wish would be to either be found to continue on, but to like wash away the events before, never forgetting the people that he's with, or to be picked up by the engineers because they discovered that on this planet of all planets, their weapon isn't working the way that it's supposed to. And I mean, it's their weapon. Like it's their final, it's their final red button, right? And they're like, well, what's that about? And there's just a low
Yeah,
synth.
why didn't it work this time for the first time in 1,000 fucking years? Why
Yeah.
this one? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's like the existence of Kitchen's wish. I don't think he dies, even if it means that he wanders eternally. But Bub's wish was still like since season 1. I wish that we could have had a little more potential for Yautja. I think that would have been super neat seeing the Predator Force.
Yeah, I wish I had a way to bring that in.
It's not really an easy way.
It's not an easy way. And the question is, what piece do we consider canon from the comic books? Obviously, I don't consider any of the crossover movies canon.
No.
But they are canon in the comic books. And technically, Bub, there is one that in our timeline would have actually been on LV-426 when y'all were there. He's on that planet hunting. It's his first, like, he's trying to maintain the alien population of a planet that is basically a xenoplannet.
Oh, from the comics?
Yeah, from the comics. And he actually works with a group of people that crash land there. You and Barden found their ship. It's the one you chose not to open.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So all of that is actually tied to everything that y'all saw on that planet is actually tied to tied to comic book stuff.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
there is technically a predator that hunts on that planet.
That's where the Deacon
Technically.
Sharks come from, that comic. Yeah.
Yes, correct.
It's a gross goblin shark monstrosities. Fucking
If I were to do another series, it would be in a different time. I'd pick a very, very different time. And it would probably include some of the history because there's some that believe that, the predator species is just like humans. DNA from the engineers was sent out into the universe, and humans are one thing that populated, and the predators are another. And part of the reason, one of the beliefs or theories or whatever, is that when they decided to kill off the species that were unworthy, including us, when those ships were supposed to leave and never made it to come kill us, they also sent one for the predator species, and they fought them off and won. And so now they realize who the dominant species is, which is the Xeno race, brought on by their literal gods, their creator, and they hunt them across the universe now because they spilled first blood. The engineers spilled first blood.
This is unrelated to anything we've done and only to this conversation. My new wish is that we do 4 one-shots where it is 4 regular-ass humans versus a predator. Battle Royale. Whoever wins, so there's going to be like one winner, like in the Predator movie, right? One human survives. One left standing in each of the 4 one-shots, and those 4 survivors team up with the Predator to kill aliens. Is so a 5-shot series where we have 4 different casts and then a final team-up cast to just fuck up aliens with a Predator.
You heard it here first. There you go.
One day, Dot.
Q1 2025.
Yeah, right. One day, Dot and I will get really bored, and this will come back up.
Yes, it will.
Or one day we'll get really bored, and G will harass us until we make it happen. So one of the two. Cool. I guess that brings it to me for stars and wishes. Shit. Yeah, I will say, G took one of my stars in chat and said even one of the pirates was like, "Hey, I think your synth is broken," and Barden was like, "Nah, fam," which that is absolutely I loved that. I loved the whole like it was like, "Welcome to my death ball. Please come on inside."
Step inside.
Yeah, step inside. Watch what happens. And the only thing I can equate it to is like because of like the weird comedicness to our horror show is like when they go fight the fucking rabbit in Monty Python and they have the holy hand grenade and it's like, oh, it's just a little rabbit, like, just this way. No, it's fine, it's just an influenza, you'll be fine, just step right on in, keep your helmets on, arms, hands, legs inside the car at all time. Fucking eating so hard. But no, everything, like the last episode, it was tense for a different reason than I think we planned for. Like the second to last episode, we were like, fuck, pirates, what are we gonna do? And then we just didn't discuss it at all. And then the start of the next episode was like, oh, we fucking feed them. Look, gone. Pirates gone, 30 minutes, pirates done. And then the rest of it was like, how does everyone die? Okay, cool, let's play that out for fucking hours as we agonize over our own deaths.
And it took y'all an hour and a half to deal with the pirates for the rest.
Yeah, yes.
Of the 4-hour episode.
Of the 4-hour episode, yeah. But like we thought it was gonna be such a big problem, and it really only was like we just pushed them down the tube, and then it was like dealing with an alien, dealing with fucking other weird shit. So like what we thought was gonna be the final episode, the big stressor, was not, and then we completely agonized ourselves over who dies the best. And then my other star was Dot. I was as shocked as everyone as to how Barden died. I did that, and then Dot said how he died, and I went, no, that makes sense. That was not what I thought at all for some reason would happen, and then it happened so hard, and I was like, no, that makes sense. Everything Dot said makes sense. So when she was like, yeah, Barden smashes it, I was like, oh, fuck, yeah, he does, huh? That's shit. There he is. I was like, that's traumatic for everyone involved. Okay. And I don't know like where I was in my brain space that week that I didn't, or like at that hour of the night that I didn't think that's what would happen, but I was like, yeah, this is gonna be
I don't get in the pod. I was like,
yeah,
You don't get in the pub.
okie dokie.
I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking, where I was in that moment, but
it's like, look at me, kitchens, I'm all buckled up.
yeah, so that was a surprise. It was a shock. Yeah, I guess my wish, everyone else's was so cool. I would like, so Dot, you have a legacy in Alien in that you have run it multiple times outside of our stream, and connected it back to this stream. I know you've done it on a cruise ship. I think you've done it somewhere else as well. But I would like future Alien one shots set in the Dot verse to all tie back to this. Like, I want to hear about a one shot where like the sequel to the Space Beast is found, right? Like, I want to hear I want to hear the rumor of an absolutely batshit insane synth working for the fucking engineers, right? Like, people keep spotting this thing happening. Yeah, I just want to hear like the legacy of the crew of the Monstro. Yeah, that's what I want. I want the crew of the Monstro to live on in the future one shots set in this Dotverse. That's my wish. Yeah, so that's it for me. Dot, last but not least, and because it's all over, you get to make as many wishes as you want. So what are your stars and wishes?
I don't know about wishes. Okay, how about this? I don't really usually do stars and wishes, so I'm gonna break it, and I'll tell you, Ren's survival drops to almost nothing when that that agent is released by the engineers, right? Now, Kitchens is right. We did also release a counter option, which is meant to attach itself to the XX-121. The biological weapon they drop from the air will literally eat Ren's flesh. Like it is a done. If there was anything left of Ren when all that was finished, the fungus that Kitchens created would then attack your body. So you're going to get it double simply because you are literally the prime organism used to both spread what Kitchens put here, and the object of attack by the weapon that they drop from the sky. So I said this in the after show, and I think I wonder if Kitchens would have put Ren out of her misery before. I think about that. What happens to Ren? Does Kitchens let Ren just face the facts? Or does Kitchen choose a strange level of empathy and put Ren out of her misery? I don't know that we really know
Choose
that. but-
option 3.
I think there is a strong chance that running the numbers, he probably would have informed Ren. And I mean, he's not going. It's just his friend, so he doesn't want to see, or to him, it's his friend, so he doesn't want to see her die, but he certainly doesn't want to see her suffer. So there would be some sort of consensual moment there of like, what would you like to do, or what is most preferential in this moment?
Okay, but option 3 is we did crash land on the place where the facility was. So, in common Ren fashion.
Run for the facility.
Yeah.
Well, that brings me to point number 2: Kitchen's survival.
Yeah.
Kitchens, now stranded on this planet, would survive both the biological weapon
Yeah.
and what he created for the Xenos. In my mind's eye, given free reign, for this to spread and this strange ecological like system to fight itself constantly, Kitchens kind of becomes his own version of Adam in the Garden of Eden, right? Which was kind of part of the resurrection story in a certain way. That Kitchens kind of ends up living by himself with what he created. That is the Judas story, that Judas has to live with his mistake. Is the thing that fights off the biological thing a mistake? I don't really know. Whether or not Kitchens gets to meet the engineers is a bit much, I think, bigger question. They probably would return at some point to be like, what the fuck? But it's much more likely that Bishop gets his hands on you first. Much more likely. If he finds you on the planet and Bishop gets his hands on you, you're the missing puzzle piece to relaunch David 1. What pieces he's managed to recover and the research that he needs, and yeah. So I think there's I don't know. There's actually Kitchens has the most potential options for how what the future turns out, but it's a lonely future. I think for Kitchens regardless. So the real question is that living for Kitchens? Because he literally created a constant cycle of life and death on this planet, which he has to watch constantly. Yeah, very tough. Well, we know what happens to Barden, but we will say Barden leaves behind a legacy. I want to think I rolled for this. He got out like 93%,
94%, something like that.
4% of the space beast before the ship crashed, which means, in my mind's eye, the most of the story made it, except for the end. What actually happened to these people is what basically doesn't get delivered out into the world. Yeah, fucks. I'm sorry, Barden. I'm sorry. It was bound to happen. You wouldn't have much life left anyways. You were slim. You would have been fast pickings had you survived on the planet.
Oh yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Either way, it would have been the same question for Barden as for Rin, right? It's like either Kitchens has to watch him slowly die of infection, or push him in a hole. Like either way.
Either way, it's a lose-lose situation. And then, speaking of lose-lose situation, we've got Vince. I knew from the beginning when those pirates pulled up that they were carrying eggs. I knew that. The question was whether or not y'all were going to find out. I had no idea how the pirate thing was going to go down. Y'all could have hauled ass and ran. It could have ended up being a space battle. You could have not let them on board and they could have forced their way in. There were 1,000 options. And I had no idea how it was going to turn out, but I knew that they were carrying Wayland Yutani crates. Because when y'all set power to the Sevastopol, somebody found out. And these pirates were nearby, right? They were scavenging something else, or maybe they were carrying this payload back to Bishop or Wayland-Yutani. Yeah. And they were the first on the scene, and they got called in by somebody, cough cough Bishop, to go check it out. And they found you all there. So I found it as a GM very humorous. There's probably a moment on screen if you go back and watch where a sneaky smile crosses my face when Ren's like, "Let's take the pirate ship." I'm like,
So
yes.
I want to comment on that. So Meta knew, because you mentioned a few things that you don't check around. Like there was a lot of hints, and I was like, Meta knows exactly where Dot's going with this, but Ren cares about only one thing, right?
And
So I
that's
was
all
like, I
right.
can't break out of the character's motivation here to go
Nope.
just rummaging around the ship. So, you know, that's what happened.
Yeah,
and I was like,
asked her
I
a
know
couple
there's some
times.
crazy shit going on there.
I was like, "Did anybody check storage?" And y'all were like, "Doesn't matter. It's our way out of here." I was like, "Cool,
Yep.
get on board."
Yep. Yep.
But I think that's I wanted to make sure at the end that we seeded the process over again.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the idea, is that there is no solution. It is an ongoing, we create, how do you stop life? That was David's point, right? That was one of the points that David tried to make, is you can't stop it. Once it's going, it's going. You created me, Wayland, and you can't tell me that I can't create too. Just like the engineer can't create. It's a lineage pass down of what it means to make and take life. And so at the end, I had to complete the circle. We couldn't be free of aliens. There's no way, right? It's so much bigger than that. Now, what people do with Kitchen's research and how they might augment it and use it to fight is a whole other story. But getting rid of the problem, it's not really as simple as just like, treating an STD. It doesn't just go away. So in this regard, I wanted to plant the idea that even though Vince and all of these people got to this place, the eggs are just waiting. They're just waiting. And Vince almost has probably one of the most tragic stories. If you know that those eggs one day are going to burst open to facehuggers and attack this innocent colony, basically, that they set up in safety. Their children there, their own kid's going to be there. It's Vince from 7 years old has lived this nightmare. We saw it from the beginning. He's lived this nightmare since the very first moment we met him, and that it's been decades. And some things, no matter what, never change. It almost haunts Vince to some degree. And I couldn't let him get away, clean and sound.
It still has a chance to take him out, though. I mean, it's only 2
Yeah.
eggs versus
it is
I'd
only
like to
2
think
eggs.
we wouldn't spend all that time never having checked the inventory
Yeah.
of that ship.
No, I imagine you actually begin unloading it. That's how y'all find it, right? Like you kind of get settled, you get yours, and then it becomes this like slow process of unloading whatever the pirates had on board, which, if you're lucky, is food and supplies and guns and who knows what else. And amongst it all, you find just Wayland-Yutani crates, the biggest, scariest thing that you can possibly find.
Plus Ren's
Star
hoard
System.
of random shit she's accumulated
Yeah,
over
the
40
things
years,
that Ren has hid here as well.
Yeah.
Which you
So-
can bet there's definitely weaponry.
So we'll say, I don't know. Let's see. Let's talk about some things we didn't get to see that I had planned that just never happened, right? I questioned whether y'all would actually make the trip to the research base this season. That would actually, like, you chose to go to Sevastopol instead. But I questioned whether or not, especially at the beginning when that bomb got dropped, that there was some kind of rebel activity. The rebel activity, of course, being the engineers. In the Colonial Marine RPG book, they talk about the engineers. It's the first time they're actually properly mentioned in extent. And one of the things they say is, for the GM to note, is that the engineers are out there bombing planets. But it's never blatantly stated it's engineers. And their reason and their cause and their purpose, all of that is very, very questionable. They're meant to be a boogeyman that appears in your story in and out as like a shadow on the horizon, or the figure in the closet that just appears, bombs a planet, and then disappears again. And so I held that because I knew that they were going to bomb that particular planet, that they were going to bomb his research facility. And I wanted you all to witness it, but you needed to be there. So I didn't know if that was going to happen first. And what we were actually going to see is y'all trying to evacuate a planet that had just been nuclear bombed by XX-121. Or if this was going to be a like, y'all go let off the fungus inside directly of the research facility, which had everything Kitchens needed, included live bodies and xenos. Like I wasn't really sure. And the route y'all took set us up to be able to have that beautiful moment at the end where the engineers appear, like where it all started, like Zach said, kind of comes full circle. So that was one of the things that I wasn't really sure. I was fully prepped to go inside of Bishop's fucking facility, the whole 9 yards. Had y'all done that, you would have found out that he located Evie's body and had been interrogating her.
Oh.
That was a big secret that I was going to hold. I was waiting to see if they were going to come back so I could message Meta and be like, yo, they redug up that facility, of course. And what they found at the bottom of a fucking elevator shaft was the top half of Evie's body. And what did they do but bring her back, plug her in, and get that's how he got information on all of you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That was one of his very first sources of information. So that would have been a return of a character we could have seen. Let's see what else. Other things that happened that I had planned for. Oh goodness, there were quite a few things early in the seasons. I had planned actually a long storyline with the Colonial Marines.
Yeah, you seeded that a lot in the second season.
And the second season, because they're out there fighting it, right? They're being sent to these planets to kill bugs and all of this kind of stuff. And I had actually set back up potentially for this season for us to get some Marine stuff, but we didn't actually keep a Marine in the crew properly. So they're just kind of out there doing their thing. So honestly, if I were to run another Alien game, it would be focused on the Marine storyline.
I will say it's crazy to think, and I feel like this happens. I don't know if this happens a lot everywhere, but it happens a lot on this channel. It's crazy to think this whole series, years in the making, started, and the whole plan was one season, one cast, 2 crews, switching back and forth through time, and then most of them die, like an Alien movie, and then that's the end, and that was it. And it's wild to think back to, like, how these characters came to be, right? We had, like, Evie the Synth Doctor, and then we had, did we land on Jake? What the fuck did we... He had 2 names, right? I think Jake is where we landed on the name
Jake,
that we were calling
and then we found out his real name was Ben.
Yeah. But I think even through season 4, I think we were calling him Jake. But then, like, we had Vince was literally like a 7-year-old kid, and Barden was meant to be the guy from Office Space who gets his stapler stolen. That was his whole character basis. He was in the basement of planets, and then we had the whole other crew with like a fucking corporate synth. Obviously, we had Rin and Kitchens and Desta, and like the way Desta came back in season, was it 3? Like it was crazy. It was a crazy fucking turn of events. All planned on a single 6-episode run. That got 3 more seasons because everyone was so fucking voracious for the show.
And honestly, I had planned that season to end differently. Because I wanted to kill you all. That was the point. It's gonna be 6 episodes. I wanted it to be deadly. This group of people die in 3. This group of people die in 3, and it didn't really turn out that way. Some of you survived, but the plan was to end at that 6th episode with Bishop digging you all up, just like he did Ripley. At the end of the 3rd movie, basically, where we saw him digging all of her DNA up, right? And it looped. It was going to full circle, a tiny circle. It got real big real fast. But yeah, people fell in love with your characters and like the struggle, and yeah.
We have a question for Dot. As the GM, seeing the completed story now, is there anything you would have done differently? That's a good question.
I debated at one point whether it was the right move to introduce another David unit, like Kitchens coming across another disciple out there on his like journey. And then I actually came back on that because I thought I liked the mystery of Kitchens never quite getting to meet another David unit. Like he has to make his own choices now at this phase of everything. What I've done differently, so much of it was based on the choices and like where y'all decided to go, right? Like I had to, like, it got to a point where like I knew what David one was planning. I knew what his plan was, and I knew that so much of his plan relied on kitchens, because as a GM I knew that at some point around season 3, I knew Kitchens was looking for, before we got to the ending, Kitchens was looking for some kind of cure, a solution. Um, and finding another David was not the interesting story, I think, to tell. So I decided to kind of against that, and I knew that that's where we were headed. And by that point, I had to go hands off. I had to say we have to go where you go. I definitely didn't plan on the space station, the sphere, the organic sphere burning up an atmosphere. That was like a whole other thing. Definitely didn't plan for that. Definitely didn't plan on y'all visiting the Sevastopol. At least not this season. I had thought y'all might do it last season when you first got the ping for the Sevastopol. Definitely didn't plan on y'all actually visiting the LV planets. I thought y'all might get close because I had prepped for Bishop's research facility, but actually going planet side was not something I had. Yeah. Would I do anything differently? Yeah, I might have to simmer a little on. God, so much happened over so many seasons. Would I do anything differently? I wouldn't do any of the space stations that we visit. I wouldn't do Destin's Death any differently. It was so impactful.
Yeah.
I might, and again, this isn't do it differently. It's just like this is not how it turned out. I would have liked to have actually gotten Shakespeare to trial.
Okay. That's
I think y'all
interesting.
would have learned a few things had you actually had managed to get Shakespeare to trial or spoken to him before everything broke loose. Yeah, that would have been interesting for you to actually really get to talk to Shakespeare.
I have to say, I know we've done Stars and Wishes, but this is like a star for everyone here. Like huge kudos to everyone's ability to fucking not just yes and, right? Like it's easy to be like, oh yeah, and then sort of pivot on that. Like everyone here fully like embodies the yes and in this show for sure. The amount of wild shit we've said, and then just everyone just fucking roll. Hey guys, let's slingshot the space ball into a planet. Okay, yeah, sure. Hey Dot, I'd like to fucking take the ant zombie fucking fungus
Yeah, I'd
from
like a
Earth
fungus to do
and,
when Bub
make it
dropped
work for
that on
aliens.
me and it's so interesting because that space station was really, I don't want to call it a hitch in my plan. It was the most unexpected thing of last season. Not the most recent one, but the one before it. Because I had actually thought about introducing you all to that planet as the place you had actually sought refuge after season 1, not your colony.
Oh, okay.
That is
That's
actually one of
interesting.
my favorite pieces of lore. That station. It is
Arceon?
actually the Arceon station. It's actually canonical and originally was meant to be the location for
Yeah.
the third movie.
Mm.
Yeah, you showed us the
It was
concept
where
art of it.
because they had full concept art and that's where it was supposed to be. And then when it went into production, they decided to change the location to the prison planet of what we now know as Fiornia 161. But they had all of this incredible lore around this space station that we basically never see. And it's such an interesting piece of history, specifically because it's one of the only canonical things they ever wrote for movies, even though it didn't make it in, where you're actually witnessing a group of people outside the basic Wayland-Yutani colonial marine structure. These people actually were rebels on Earth, old Earth, right? Original Earth, and were placed there as their prison. They basically were given a space station and left in space. They didn't get any supplies. Nobody ever came to check on them. It's Australia. Arceon is the Australia of space.
Mhm.
We dumped everything, Weyland-Yutani, well, Earth at the time, dumped everything they didn't want on Arceon and put it as far out in space as they could, and it developed into its own very unique thing. And so, yeah, it was just I thought it was a very interesting take, and I don't know all the real reasons why it doesn't make it in that movie and why they decided to go with a prison planet instead. It probably had to do something with budget and what they could actually make happen um, at the time when those movies were made. But yeah, that location I had wanted to bring in much, much, much earlier, and then had actually written it off by the time we got to it in season 3, and it just happened to pop up as a little bit of a location.
Yeah,
Um,
some wild shit that people have suggested in the course of this game. That everyone's just been like, okay, yeah, let's see where that
can
train.
I make robotic pants that give me special powers?
might as well try. You know, what's the worst that can happen? Can I make a ocular injection for Barden to hype his shit
Yeah.
up? Sure.
I keep hearing a lot of things that I came up with, and I don't know if I should be appalled or it's absolutely
You should
excited.
be proud. You should be proud.
I think what I meant to say was I'm so proud of everyone else for making this such a safe space for Bum, who is
Yes, thank
who is
you.
chronically a GM. So when he gets to play a player, he just makes up wild shit
Wild
where he's like,
shit.
"Deal with me now, fuckers."
Yeah, what are you gonna do now, Bill? Yeah. Mike, you mentioned. I guess I can reveal this to everybody. I might have mentioned this in an after show, but I did run a one shot on a cruise. I say a one shot. It was really 3 3-hour sessions or 3 4-hour sessions or something like that. That was precursor to all of this. I was interested in what really happens if players actually played on the Covenant and like what David was actually doing long before he started manipulating and rewriting the code inside of all of these David units. And so on the cruise, they played a group of people. They actually played the Colonial Marines that were meant to protect the the colony that was supposed to get set up by the Covenant that never did. So they were part of the 2,000 colonists. And basically, David was using it as a petri dish. After he took it over and put everybody back into sleep, he took the Covenant out into space, claimed it made it where it was supposed to go, because if you check the mother system tells you the Covenant made it. And he ran off. He hightailed with it and started doing research. And so he would wait. He would create more Xenos or a new strand or a new type of face hugger, and then he'd wake up 5 or 6 people, quarantine them, not tell them, and just let the Xenos go. And these people would wake up in the middle of an experiment as the experiment. And so for the one shot, nobody, it was all dudes, surprise, and at my table, and none of them played a woman. And we know that the magic mix is for Alien is always one woman has to survive. Now, I knew from the beginning that woman would be Ace in our story. Come hell or high water, Ace would have survived the end. Always. One, because she was pregnant, so some story buffering, but 2, she was meant to be always, and I knew it from the moment I introduced her character, that she was always meant to be the final. And
Yeah,
everybody
that
else
was
died.
one of my questions actually, is like, what was your she and the whole concept of her having access to a secret network of information with her father being trapped inside of a space
Mhm.
pod that's drifting in the middle of nowhere was very strange. One of my questions actually for you was like, what was your original plan for Ace, and like, why did you introduce her as a character?
Because you all needed a perspective of a group of people not attached to one of the major factions. Right? I wanted to see, I as a GM, this was not in the book somewhere. There were there's no information on this, but not everybody can be aligned to Weyland-Yutani. Not everybody can be aligned to United Americas or any of the other major factions. Like, some people are just out there. And one of the things that always struck me when I watched the Alien movies is that it seems that it's not really innovation. It's like all creativity has been ripped clean. Everything on a Weyland-Yutani ship is sterile. There's no art. There's very little plant life. You never really hear of music except for once or twice, right? It's this idea that we've kind of Weyland-Yutani has come through and whitewashed part of our culture of who we are. And I wanted a group of people that were protecting it. who
Mm.
saw what they were trying to take. These are genuine rebels, and Shakespeare was just one of many, right? That was part of that. But I wanted Ace to be somebody connected to information, but information you all didn't know that you needed. I also wanted somebody connected to the Sevastopol because that was the season in which I expected y'all would end up at the Sevastopol when you found out that that was her original. Now, it had happened many years earlier and she had been on cryo and her dad had been out in space. But I just loved this idea. I love this idea, this kind of backwards Indiana Jones, where there is no museum. They are the museum. And how, when Wayland Yutani has all of the resources, do you keep these things from them? Well, you split the museum up. It's exactly what we did in World War II. When the Nazis started taking over France and we had to empty out the Louvre, what did we do? We took all the art and we put them on all these different shipments and we shipped them out to various locations so that you couldn't find one pile of art in any one location. It's the only way to actually protect things. And this is exactly what this was. Station Alexandria wasn't really a station until a little bit later in our story when Ace tried to rally what was left of that crew, and what her father and Shakespeare and all these other people were trying to do. She brought them together, but really it was never a station. They were isolated time pods, and y'all just literally happened to stumble across one. Mike knows that I like having what I call a GM NPC or story NPC, somebody that is always around that allows me to have an in-character voice or opinion. I do it for almost everything, and Ace just kind of became that character because I knew that all of you had very much said that you wanted to die, and an alien story desperately needs the single standing female at the end.
I have a question that we were never going to know the answer to.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
In season 2, when we saw another David as we were like leaving a station,
Yeah, I remember.
how many Davids are still active?
A great question. So in the one shot, they managed to actually find, because the ship was still total, the Covenant was in total. They actually found the shipping container with the other David units and turned them on by accident, repowered them up because they wanted to ask them questions, not knowing what they were getting into, and they powered up all the David units. And they, of course, attacked, and there were some things that went down and blah, 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 blah. So when Kitchens was having the memory sparks, we'll call them, where he was remembering things, and one of the things he was doing was piecing all the Davids back together, that's because those players blew up all the Davids. They threw a grenade and blew them into pieces. Hitchens was called in as in this case, a mechanical David unit, one that fixed things and put all the Davids back together. So he has all of these vivid memories, or these memories rushing back, of him piecing. There are, in total, canon, 7 David units, not counting David 1, I believe. So there are technically 7 disciples. And each one of them are named in the order of which the disciples were founded.
Okay. We have a question here in chat, and Bub, I know you just answered a bit of this, but by all means, expand on this. So, question for Bub: what was the most challenging thing about playing a synth?
Yeah, I was just answering that. I don't actually have a clean answer for that, but I can expound upon it. So I had to ask myself early on, how did I want to play a synth regardless? Do I want to play them as like the sleeper cell synth, or do I want to play them as someone who is self-aware? And I talked with Dot about that, and I liked the idea that he was a self-aware synth. That just kind of gave everybody like the icky vibe all the time, because that's sort of what synths do. Like, nobody really likes synths. And I had to come to terms with that. Like, is he everybody's best friend? Or is he just completely cool making drugs and everybody accepting him as their dealer because he's a synth? So once I accepted that, then I had to come to terms with, how do I develop a character that has incomplete academic knowledge of just about everything that could be recorded, but has the emotional capacity of like a goldfish.
Yep.
And then suddenly allow him the capacity to grow emotionally. And that was really, really difficult because I was thinking back, like when I was a child, like how did I grow emotionally? And a lot of it's through trauma, right? I think that's how we all grow,
That's
is
how
through
most people
trauma.
grow. Yep.
So I just kept throwing him into early trauma, and early trauma for me was like, how do I know if somebody's my friend? Why
Mhm.
why are my friends treating me this way? So each season presented a new emotional trauma that he had to kind of springboard from. That's why, like, he desperately needed friends in season 2, and he was attaching himself to like his understanding of emotions, and friends was like, yeah, I saw this in anime. Anime is so cool. You guys would love this. It just makes so much more sense. Like they're friends because they even punch each other and they're still friends, but
Yep.
not in the world of Alien. Like you
If
strike
I
someone.
punch you, you die.
Yeah,
David
exactly,
always
right?
reminded me a little bit of a sociopath. Somebody who seems completely normal, but actually does not have the capacity for emotions.
Yeah.
Right? And they want so badly, so they're always going to mold and be malleable and make everybody feel comfortable. But the fact of the matter is, they are kind of incapable of real emotion,
Yeah.
and that's what makes them so unhinged.
Yes. Yes. Every part of that is completely true. So I mean, by the end of it, there was the moment where Ren was like, "No, this guy lives," and it was the guy that came out of cryo that was supposed to die.
Yep.
Um,
Reed, Colonial
s-
Marine Reed.
season
Yeah.
2 Kitchens would have been like, you know what, Ren knows best. I agree. Ren knows best, but by the end, Kitchens was like, let him slip up when Ren is not around, and Kitchens will give him a peaceful, simple death. It's just that simple because he was no longer looking at everyone else's decisions with the utmost of clarity. He was simply looking at how can I mother bear everyone and keep them alive long enough because they're all failing and they're not
Mm.
failing forward. So it was really, really hard for Kitchens. Like there is no way for me to emotionally explain it, but to watch Barden from the outside of the sleep tank, that was like, how would Kitchens, like that was like the pushover moment
Yep.
of him really kind of losing. It's like he lost Desta. The ship is crashing. He's going to lose Ren, and now he's watching his best friend die. All while he's still trying to swallow whether or not he just traveled like 20 years with a kid that he watched grow up, and that was very difficult. And learning that that kid was trying to like manufacture means of disassembling and destroying him. It was very, very difficult for him to kind of like wrap his mind around. Like, how are friends supposed to kill each other? Is that normal? That's not
Yep.
normal. So yeah, it was very, very difficult, but it was fun, and that's kind of where I wanted to challenge myself. You know, I stopped playing like these what am I looking for? The mechanical monkey that wants to just like min max, right? I don't want to do that anymore. I want to play the weirdest thing I possibly can, and a lot of that is like touching on emotions as a storyteller myself. So it was fun to get to play him. It was very challenging, and it was also extremely emotional.
Yeah.
I have a question kind of going off of that because as you were talking about your play of uh, being a synth, and I was like, well, the first person to do that was actually Meta playing as Eve in a sense. So that kind of same question to you. But then I was thinking, and this is the actual question. So me and Bub both of our characters lived for most of the story, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Desta and Vince and Ben and Kitchens
Yep.
lived for most of our seasons, right? Whereas on the other hand, Mike and Meta, your guys' characters, Eve and I don't even remember. I know you had a company agent guy. I don't even remember his name. What was his
Dash
name?
Dash
Dash.
Corin,
Dash.
Dash.
making your
I'm-
life better today, tomorrow.
Oh my god, that's right. So my question is kind of bouncing off of that. To Meta specifically, what was your approach with playing a synth character? But then to both Mike and Meta, what are your thoughts about those characters that you guys were not able to play for the remaining 3 seasons of our show? Is there anything that you guys had planned for those characters if they had lived like the same way that Desta and Ben did?
Meta.
Yeah. So I actually kind of played a purist synth by inspiration of actually Bishop from the movies because his whole thing at the end was to try to save Ripley. And so with Eve, I was like, her entire purpose is aside from being a medical synth in science, right? She sees an opportunity to help the human stay alive. Like her life it is not necessity for her to survive, so to speak, right? So I very much I watched all the movies before we played just to kind of refresh on how things occurred. And I decided early when I made the character, I was like, I'm gonna play this as a pure like sleeper synth. She doesn't know that she is. That was the only difference between her and the bishop thing. But the moment that human life was in jeopardy, she was 100% willing to sacrifice herself to help them. And that's like, I wanted it to be that way because her entire premise really was, aside from the um little bits of against Barden with the like the argumentative, like the human programming, right? That the human factor, because she didn't know she was a synth until later. Um, that was my approach with it. It was very much in that regard. So
Uh, I will say, Dash is also a synth. I don't remember if that came up in the game, but he was also a sleeper synth, but not in the same way as Eve. Whereas like Eve didn't know she was a synth until the end. Dash was Ash. He was Ash from Alien One. He was 100% a company man. He
Wow.
was intentionally there to fuck you guys over. And from day one, I made Barden and then I made Dash, and I was like, Dot, this is the one that dies. So like,
And I said, okay.
yeah, so like Dash was always meant to die, because he was meant to be the scumbag. He was meant to be, oh fuck, what's his name? The dude from Aliens. Oh god, he's like the main character.
Oh yeah, the one
besides
that
Ripley.
convinces Ripley to go
Yep.
with them.
Yeah.
Kind of
He-
smarmy and
Yeah,
corporate.
he was meant to be exactly that character, but as a robot. Which is why he was like,
Yes.
he was like branded, like company man,
Never.
like full on. So like that was his intention, was for you to immediately identify that you hate this character, and then feel no remorse when he dies, so that you do feel remorse when the characters you like die, right? Like it was meant to. I think Dash was meant to be the first death. Is what I think me and Dot toyed with the idea of, just to be like, hey, we're not fucking around. People can die. And like, whoop, we're gonna cut this guy like right in half or some shit.
Yeah.
So it was meant to be a fast, violent death for him. So he was made to be completely unlikable. I knew he wasn't gonna last. I'm very surprised Barden lasted as long as he did.
Yeah, me too. I tried, y'all witnessed it. I did try to kill him a few times.
yeah,
Yeah.
you did.
Every season, Dot. Every season.
Yeah.
It's
The
just
wily,
my rolls were garbage for the
the,
Xeno.
the wily old fuck just had it in him. He just had it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had the
I
spark.
still feel like in my opinion and my feeling, the closest that I feel like we ever came to death was either season 2 or 3 in space when Enzo was with us, and there was some ship or something.
yeah.
I don't know whose ship it was, and Rin was over there with Enzo with a full grown ass
Yes.
alien.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that one
yep.
was insane.
That's what I
That's so
still,
bad.
of all 4 seasons, I think that was literally the closest any of us
There were a
came.
couple times y'all got a little close. I think I could have extended and really put the heat on you when Arceon was burning.
Sure.
But I opted out of that because I really wanted y'all to see the destruction left
Mhm.
behind. Right? They were literally in complete balance until all you did was fuck with one prisoner, right? And it just like the whole ecosystem collapsed. And
Yeah.
I wanted
Yeah.
I wanted that in your wake. I didn't actually plan on y'all going back, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah,
But yeah, there that was
the red eyes.
yeah, that one y'all got a little close. I think on that one, and things got hairy a couple times with some spacewalking. There were once or
Yeah.
twice with Rin where Rin spacewalk did not go in Rin's favor. Remember the one with the debris and Rin
Yes.
almost lost it? Yeah.
Or Ren just
Uh,
counting down oxygen with her own blood as she was like,
With her
I'm writing
own
my
blood,
memoir
Yeah.
inside of a
Uh,
fucking.
Yeah.
that Rin
That
got
was a
pretty
close
close there
call.
too. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a cat snooped got a little too curious vibes for that one.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
actually
but
Tracy's
Rin was unhinged
character,
at that point.
right? They were almost to death when y'all found them too. Had y'all not
Oh,
figured out a way to
100%.
get in, I told
Yeah.
Tracy, I said, your character may just die of suffocation,
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
and hunger. Like I need you to know
Yeah.
that if they don't act quick enough. And Tracy was like, Tracy is okay. So,
Yeah.
you know, but yeah, I was trying to think what other. The first season definitely had the most like. It was the one that was set up the most like a short term.
Yeah.
Felt like a slasher flick.
Yeah.
More like
Yeah.
a
Season 1 felt
slasher
like a
flick.
slasher
Yeah.
flick.
Yeah.
Yep. And I knew when we were going into something longer, even though I didn't know how many seasons, I wanted it to feel more like a mystery.
Yeah.
Y'all had handled the stress of this other thing, and now you're holding a secret. That was the don't forget, we also saw things other than Xenos. Y'all witnessed one of the creatures on Fioria 161, the one that tried to stop your vehicle getting off of the planet.
Mhm.
Remember
Yeah.
the
Also-
metal-moving Earth
Yeah,
creature?
we saw
Oh, yeah.
we saw hammerpedes, we saw
saw
deacon
hammerpedes, too.
sharks, but also we saw neolith, neo
Yeah, y'all saw some
neomorph.
neomorphs.
We saw a
Yeah,
neomorph in season
neomorphs.
1, a big white one.
They
big
tend
gnarly
to
white
die
one.
a lot
Mm.
faster, only because they're not as strong. They just eat flesh, and they don't have the kind of long term longevity of the actual Xeno itself. The phase to from the overmorph phase. But yeah, there
One-
were
one
some
thing
weird
I-
things.
One thing I wanted to point out, I loved season 1 for different reasons of loving the other seasons. Season 1, I think, is such a great introduction to the Alien RPG
Yeah.
and the vibes of the Alien universe. Like it was there were so many moments where like this could totally be in the movie. Like you could see it
Yeah.
happening. And
Yeah.
I loved that about it because when people ask me, I told them, hey, I'm on one of the Alien RPGs with Dot and everybody, and they're like, "Oh, that's so cool. Where is it?" And so I'd show them. I was like, "You guys have to watch the first season. Like, if you've never played the Alien RPG, just watch the first season and you'll be hooked because it's just that way of it's constantly on the edge of your seat, like." This shit's about to go down and it just keeps escalating and escalating just like it does in the movies,
It's very
you just get hit
anxious.
so hard. Exactly. And I love that about it because it's one of my reasons why I love horror movies. That's why I love it. It's just that thriller and psychological aspect of like, it's about to get really serious and then everything comes crashing down right at once. And I just, it was so good. Season 1 was really
I-
like primed for introducing people to the genre so much.
I will piggyback on what you're saying here and flip it to be like that is one of those things where like the buy-in of the players is also like super important in all games, but like especially in horror games. Like we talk about Rin almost dying, deprived of oxygen inside the weird tank in whatever. The only reason she survived is because we found her. But the whole time, like, we know she's there, but our characters have no idea. So, like, we're as a cast, we're holding this character's life in our hand. We're like, fuck, we really want to save your character. We really don't want to have you roll another character. But like, how do we navigate this story and be consistent with the buy-in to not make it feel cheap or GMX Machina or whatever, to like get us there and be like, you're saved, and have it feel genuine. So like when it's like I remember like Zach was in a different scene than me and Bub, and when it's Zach's scene, I'm like, how do we get fucking Meta out of here? Like she's gonna for real die. Like I'm actually anxious. I'm like, she's gonna really die. We've had 3 fucking seasons.
I was convinced that she
she's
would
super
die.
dead, dude.
It was funny when I dropped that. I knew what was going on in there, and I was like, I wonder if she'll. And boy, howdy, Rin.
It
I will
was
tell
true
you
to
this,
character
had
in her
Rin
mental.
died,
Yeah.
they would have arrested and tried to put the rest of you in prison.
Yeah.
One of the things you all didn't learn about Arceon, the seeds were dropped, but whether or not you connected the dots. So remember, Shakespeare got the Shag Sphere,
Yes.
by stealing it from Arceon.
Right.
That's
right.
why he was brought back and put on trial.
Yes.
He stole it because they were basically hoarding things. And if you did not live their way, they basically put you in prison and on trial.
Yeah.
Reed was also put in prison because he was he led a larger rebellion that Shakespeare was a part of. Shakespeare is the only person that escaped that rebellion. All of the people, Reed and the rest of them that you all took, were part of Shakespeare's rebellion. So one that you used for the experiment. Had y'all questioned them, talked to them, you could have learned a little bit more. This is what you would have obviously learned from Shakespeare. But basically, Arceon put all of them under cryo to go on trial for starting a rebellion. And they would have planned to do the same thing for all of you had Rin died. Because y'all would have been a risk. A massive risk. Now, Kitchens, they might have put in for maybe some reprogramming with the rest of the synths on board. But yeah, there was the rest of you would have probably been in some serious trouble.
Oh, man.
Jumping over to chat really quick, I will say, Totally Unoriginal said that they'll always remember the line from season 1, son of a bitch, it was a clip-on, which I think was Rin, which I forgot that line, and that is a fucking 10 out of 10 line. That was awesome. But also,
Was that me? I don't remember that.
I think it was because
do.
Rin was on the ship with it was Rin,
Yep.
Desta, Kitchens, and Dash, and you kept calling him Clip-On because he was a suit. And I think he died, and you went to like go grab him, and you pulled the tie off, and you were like, "This son of a bitch! It was a Clip-On."
There are some moments in this show that are so premium Alien, and Vince beating that guy's skull in with a what did you? It was a.
It was the season. It was the season tracker. It was the tracker.
Yeah.
Oh, it was. Beating that guy's skull in as a child is probably the most alien thing that has ever happened. Still to this day, when I was like, I was shocked live when that went down.
Yeah. Speaking of Zach and a child murdering a man, when playing Vince from kid to adult, what was the hardest moments of RP? Or hardest moment to RP?
I think one thing that I tried to keep in mind every season was, I don't know, just the subtle ways that he was growing and changing each season. I think that was the most difficult thing for me is so his starting age, by the way, was not 7. He was 11, but 11. Not,
close.
Tomato. But he I was just thinking about that too, because I was very, when it comes to Vince's growth and as a character, I think I, out of the cast, approached this campaign and our Alien universe with the least amount of experience. Being the youngest on the cast in real life, and then also just not having watched many of the Alien movies. Like, I think I watched the first Alien movie in full after we did the first season.
First season, yeah.
I knew generally, of course, like pop culture wise, what Alien was. But so it's very poignant for me to hear that like something that I did as my character was like thematically Alien, when I was just like, I'm a kid, I have a pad, I'm gonna hit the guy in the head. But I am very grateful for Bub and his play of Jake in that season, because I think for me, this show was my first real non D&D experience other than Vampire. I had done a like 40 something session vampire campaign at home. But other than that, not knowing much about the Alien universe, about these mechanics, I think one thing that kind of stayed at the core for Vince from the beginning was the fact that Jake was almost like this father figure to him. And then just sort of starting to go through, like, I don't know, with my youth. I mean, by the time we ended this show, Vince is actually older than me, just by a year or so, I think. So I don't know. I think the most difficult parts was trying to separate what I, as a growing adult myself, the decisions that I would make, versus being like, okay, wait, let me filter this through me 6 years ago. And the amount of retrospection that I can realistically have about myself 6 years ago. I mean, I'm going to look at myself 10 years from now, 6 years ago, and then I'll be like, God, what was I thinking? But yeah, so I'd say it was a really interesting experiment to try to play that out. And I think, especially poignant now, I think I would approach it very differently, because most of the work that I do with kids has happened the closer we got to the end of this campaign. Because in real life, a lot of the D&D programs that I run are for kids 8 to 12, and then teens 13 to 19. And a lot of that work I've started in the last 2 years. I mean, I've been working with that age group for a long time, but I have even more experience and more like practical, here's what happened this weekend. I mean, every Sunday I see these kids, and every Sunday it's something different with how they act and their innocence about the world and not knowing stuff that is like mentioned Matt Mercer to them, for example, and they had no idea who he was. I was trying to show them other DMs online. So I showed them Matt Mercer running a game for Stephen Colbert, and I turned to all these 10-year-olds, and they're like, who are those people?
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's just things like that that are even more poignant for me now, of like the experience of working with them and things like that. But yeah, I'd say yeah, the most difficult aspects, I think, was just trying to filter what I think a kid would think. And it really is, it's sort of a love letter to my younger self as well. Of, you know, I think if someone else had played a kid, then you'd be closer to playing your type of kid, you know? So yeah, it was interesting for me. Very first time I'd ever done anything like that as well. So
one of my original plans was to have Ace's reveal that she's pregnant be at the end. Like if all of you had died, it would have been part of the end epilogue reveal, is that she had survived, and one of the reasons that she did is because obviously she's pregnant with your child. And there was actually a point where I think it was a corruption bar that made me bring that in early. But
yeah,
had shit gone really awry, and all of and the monstro had become problematic, like she knew everybody was going to die, she would have left. She would have taken Rin's vessel and gotten the
good.
hell off of there, right? And
Yeah.
left you a note basically behind to let you know why she left. Because I think there's something very interesting about the longevity of your and Ace's character in particular, and getting to see your characters grow up and like what matters at what phase of what season, basically, that we were in. And there's a point, I think this season in particular, where we saw Vince have to struggle with adult problems, right? You've spent 20 years trying to solve this alien thing, but now you're faced with the adult problem of ignoring your wife and soon to be born child for a week.
Yeah.
And at what point is that mission to kill the Xeno, is it always going to be more important than your child and Ace, right? And so I really enjoyed seeing the struggle of where Vince was at season 1, the struggle of a child taking the life of an adult, to now where it's not about taking the life of an adult, it's about protecting the life of one that's going to bring your unborn child into the world. It's like a whole other
Yeah.
and I thought actually you did a very good job with that. A very good job.
Thanks.
Question for Meta. What was Rin's ideal retirement, and is Enzo with her?
Oh, okay. So that changed for Rin because she talked about quite often she should be retired. And so she had been working on this kind of nest egg, which is where she sent Vince. And her ideal retirement, when everything started before she got herself frozen for a decade, was to basically just go to this location and live out the rest of her days. At the time, it wasn't with Enzo. So Enzo, as you guys probably know, if you watch the different seasons, Enzo's kind of like Rin's on again, off again lover, but they never really solidified anything because they both lead very busy and like high level, high stress lives, right? Like Enzo's really dedicated to his military pursuits, and Rin was like, I'm just doing this so I can get out, and it wasn't something for her to just live through the rest of her life doing. And she tried in my headcanon backstory, it was she tried many times to convince Enzo to just like let's just go, like let's just do this, but I don't think realistically she ever believed he ever would. So instead she accepted that his path was different than hers, and instead was like, all right, then you need to help me so I can do what I need to do. And that's kind of where Enzo came in. She sent messages to Enzo and had him secure things for her at the location, knowing full well he probably would never join her. What changed though was watching obviously Vince develop into a young man, and then even more so the stakes got increased when she overheard Ace being pregnant, and she immediately said, I know exactly what my purpose is here. I need to get them safe. I need to give them the resources that I've culminated, and then I need to go end things with Bishop. Like Bishop, her whole personal agenda was to make sure that Bishop didn't find Vince. Like that, all she cared about. So that's why she wanted to go to the facility. So that her ideal of retirement changed. You know, it went from I just want out, I just want to relax and just live out until I die, and then it became no, I need to save and protect my family. And so that's kind of why she wrote the letter she did to Vince, and she specifically said, "You have to take care of the most important thing, which is your family." Basically saying, "I know I trained you and I helped you grow into this badass, like battle capable person, but none of that matters if you can't keep your family safe. So you have to care about that more." And so that's kind of why I ended things the way I did between them.
I
Yeah.
think Ren and Enzo are actually one of the more tragic relationships.
Yeah.
And every time, it always, now that I talk about it, it's really sad actually. Every time they met up, they talked about retirement and the future. And it's almost like they knew that that would never be, but they never stopped talking about it as if it's a thing that kept them
Yeah.
going,
Yeah.
right? I know what Enzo is up to. Um, but I wonder what, yeah, I know what I think Enzo is up to.
Yeah.
In fact, I think that if Kitchens does, if Enzo ever found out that Kitchens killed Ren, Enzo would have
Yeah.
a new purpose.
That's true.
Regardless of reason, that could be very interesting kind of story. But Enzo is not necessarily a colonial marine, right?
Yeah.
He is connected to the martial side of
Right.
things, though he has connections in the colonial marines. And I think he's been out there doing his own,
Hmm.
you know, stuff. I have thoughts on what that is. Maybe I'll save that. Maybe that's what we learn about is what Enzo's been up to.
Hmm.
Maybe we'll save that for another series, like what Enzo's team was up to. But
I love that.
yeah, I think there's a real tragicness to the fact that for so long it was their plan together and it ended up really becoming a nest egg for Vince. And they're never really going to get to have their retirement together, even though it was the thing that kind of kept the both of them going.
We can
So,
do it. We can make it happen.
yeah, very, very tragic, the Enzo storyline for sure.
Let's see. Do we have any other questions here?
I had a question for everybody.
Yeah.
Was there any inspiration for your characters? What was it what spurred you to play
Mm.
your character? I've got answers, but I'd love to hear what you guys have for both of your characters if you have them.
Yeah, I'll go first. And mine are pretty simple. So for Vince, it was the fact that when we were doing the session 0 for Alien, I was reading the book. Everyone was choosing their specializations or classes or whatever they're called, and I saw one that said kid, and I was like, that seems interesting. That seems different from all the other stuff. Is anyone going to do kid? No, I am. That's all that it came from. Vince is Italian, and on my mom's side, I'm Italian as well. That was the only connection there. And then Desta Okafor is a tribute to one of my favorite college professors who is from a small village in Kenya. And he, in all honesty, his class, he taught sociology. I really, really disliked his class. I thought he was not very good as a professor or teacher at all. But I visited him after hours. One of the most amazing, fascinating human beings I've ever met. Like super dope professor. Told all these stories about his life in Africa and in Kenya and his small village. And he would fly over during the school year to teach at my local college and then fly back to Kenya. And so it's one of those weird experiences where like I've never been a super, education kind of guy anyway, or like if there's a subject I don't like, I'm just going to get a C and move on. I'm that one of those guys. And so I made that his class, but I was like, these guys, like, when else do I get to talk to someone who's born and lives in Africa? And so he and I became, had a great, professor-student relationship. And I would see him after hours all the time. As I would go visit other professors, I would walk to his office and no one would ever come by his office. I'd knock on the door and he'd be like, my friend, hey, it is nice to see you. And we just chat for hours. So I was like, I want to make a character that matches that vibe. And that's what Desta was.
That's
I love
awesome.
that. I love that. Meta?
Okay, so Eve was 100% just alien inspired. I just wanted a synth that was completely clueless and then just became this not intentionally really martyr, I guess, but she just her programming took over, right? Like I just wanted it to be like I said, a very purist character. I didn't expect her to survive and I really didn't want her to. So the inspiration for that was really to set the groundwork again because we expected this to just be 6 episodes, right? So I was like, I just want that moment of like, oh, somebody sacrificed themselves and it was a synth. You know what I mean? Like I wanted that moment to happen because it's an alien campaign. And then Rin was 100% like, I don't want to play the young and naive character because I have a tendency to gravitate towards more younger combat oriented characters and they end up kind of just screwing things up. So I wanted Rin to be kind of almost like this excellent combat character, but was also very strategic in her approach. And so I was just kind of inspired by a lot of different, I would say, sci-fi and um, like The Expanse was a big inspiration for me of like the types of characters that are out there. They like push themselves beyond their limits constantly. And they have this kind of rough nature to them, I guess, because they've seen this crazy shit out there. And I kind of built Rin's mindset around she's seen some really crazy shit. And yet, after all of these years and these decades, like, here's the topper, here's some aliens, it's like, so I kind of built the character to always be the one that says, fuck it, let's just deal with it. Like whatever happens, I'm taking it head on. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts. So I think I was very lucky in season 1 with my roles that it solidified the concept I had in my head. Cause she had some clutch moments of like,
Mhm.
killing the face hugger mid-air. And I was like, okay, that works for the concept. Like I'm really happy that happened. But that actually really reinforces Rin's like principal character concept. So I was really happy and
Rin
I just
always
loved
felt like a
playing.
character that could come off like Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, yeah. Battlestar is deep,
Yeah.
deep in my heart.
Yeah,
Love,
me too.
love, love, love. Like I probably have so much subconscious like inspirations from that show. But it just I've rewatched it so many times I probably don't even realize it. But so much fun, and I'm just glad I got to play a more like mature character, just somebody who's really lived through it. And I guess in my own way, as what Zach kind of said, m- her own traumas like that she went through that weren't necessarily available to everybody on the surface, but she's persevered through them regardless, right? And that's kind of, I guess, especially back when we started this, a time in my life where I was dealing with a lot of like, whoa, emotions, a lot of them, and I was able to kind of push them into this kind of space for myself. So yeah.
I didn't do anything profound, guys. Dash Corn was meant to be a shit heel. He was meant to die pretty soon on screen. Um, and Axe Barden was meant to be, I think his name's Milton, from Office Space. Like that was his whole backstory. Is like he was a doctor. He has a doctorate, but he was put on some backwater frozen ice planet as a geologist. There's no rocks on that planet. It's all ice. It's a planetoid. And so he didn't have a job there. He was a Weyland-Yutani employee. Weyland-Yutani put him in the basement of planets. And then he had no job. So the people also thought he was a crackpot. So he would just like do weird shit. And he always had like bad equipment because no one gave a shit about the guy. So he was meant to be Milton. And then he came from the idea of what if I combined, oh God, now I can't think of their names. Doc Brown and that one politician that I can't think of.
Bernie
Bernie.
Sanders.
Yeah, Bernie Sanders. Thank you. What if I combined Doc Brown and Bernie Sanders is what he came out to be. And like if you like watch his progression on camera, it's all live. Like there's no backstory to him. That was it. He was meant to be like a sad guy who had his iconic item was his 25-year commemorative pen that he's been working at the company for 25 years. He was absolutely the you took my stapler guy. And I think in the first season he was talking about portals because he was just fucking out of his mind with boredom. And then he found aliens and was like, oh, so, okay, everyone was right. Portals aren't real, but fucking aliens are, dude. That's nuts. He's like, and you all saw the alien with me, so I'm not crazy, or we're all crazy. And then it just went downhill from there. Watching people come back from a 10-year ice freeze to an 11-year-old just fucking doming a guy with the seasoned PDAT, and then watching this fucking Texas gunslinger just pew 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 pew, just aliens off the walls, just killing them out of nowhere, like a 6-shooter, a space 6-shooter. Yeah, he lost his mind. And then the fact that like the only person that really gave him the time of day, because keep in mind, Vince grew up with him being the crackpot on the planet, and then he was like, I'm gonna teach you kids science. So like regardless of like how Vince matured over time, he grew up being like, that's the crazy guy, that's my old crazy grandpa, right? Like you don't get past that. And so the only person that really took him, even Rin was like, okay buddy, you gotta calm down. Like there were times where like that was their biggest conflict, is like is that Barden was kind of off a little bit, and Rin was grounded, and that was where they always came into things. So the only person that like genuinely gave him the time of day was a fucking crazy ass robot. was a crazy, way too old, slowly going into psychosis, which has its own concerns, robot, who was slowly like gaining sapience while also having a 200-year mental breakdown. So like he just continued to go down this rabbit hole. And like in the final seasons, there were scenes where like people were taking stress and he just wasn't. He was like, not even because of roles. Dot was like, yeah, you don't have to take stress because you're just fucking losing it. His moral,
you already are past the point. Like no stress is going to change that.
Yeah. Like his moral compass was so devoid that like he was like, oh yeah, you see Kitchens experimenting on these people. Okay, another Tuesday in this lab. Like it didn't affect. I didn't get a single stress for watching him grow mushrooms out of people because he was so far gone in his adult ways.
And you know, one of the things that is so interesting about Barden to me is the way that Barden played on the humanity that Kitchens didn't really have, even though Barden is the least humane human.
Yeah.
Yep. 100%.
Science rules Barden's life.
Yeah.
Right. And so because of that, he's a little desensitized to certain things, like bodies turning into human terrariums. So it was so interesting that he became this kind of foundational thing for Kitchens to hang on to, even though Barden had almost less humanity than Kitchens did, really, in a certain way.
They had that common ground of science, which is really what rooted them together, right? And like that's even with Rin, like Rin would defend Kitchens if it came down to it. There was moments where I was waiting for shit to hit the fan and be like, what would Rin do in a situation if XYZ happened, right? And because Rin's loyalty, but with Barden, it was complete. Like y'all spent tons of time together. You did science together, and I think that created a bond that made sense to Kitchens, whereas it couldn't have happened with any of the other characters at all. There would have been no way.
It's interesting that you say that because there was the constant grounding of Barden in Kitchen's life where he was like the regular, it was like your baseline, right? For like the waiver of humanity. But the most I can remember as the person telling Kitchen's story, the most touching moment for Kitchens that like brought him back from a really weird edge and bad edge was when he was under the surgical table and Ren was like, I'm just gonna hold his hand. Like that moment was like Kitchen's like, oh no, I am alive and I do matter. I do matter to people. Yeah, that was a very like crowning moment for him. It was quite nice.
I'm glad because Rin always saw Kitchen, like she never really acknowledged him in the way of a synth. I think that all the things that they went through together from like a trauma, I guess trauma bonding in some ways, right? Because of what happened. She never saw Kitchens up until the very, very end as a synth. Like she always just considered him a member of that family. It's when Vince and Ren started to pull away and like we're doing some really horrible things to humans. This is not okay. And that moment of like, what have we done? Right? Kind of started happening. But even at the end, Rin decided, I care about this person. I care about Kitchens. I care about Vince, and I've done everything I can to keep him safe. And now it's Barden and Kitchens, and the only way to keep them safe is to stay with them. And so, as much as she could, right? And like, obviously, they knew, like, she knew. She was like, the end of the line's coming. Like, this is where we're going. There's no coming back from that. That's what she fully expected. But she didn't want Kitchens to go alone, and that's why she insisted on setting things up, and even lied to Vince to make sure that he left. So
And I think you mentioned something that I want to hit on that I think is a very interesting and like incredibly subtle difference in roleplay between our two characters. Meta is that you said you never considered Kitchens a synth. You always just considered him like a person, a part of the team, etc. Whereas for Barden, he always considered him a synth, but it didn't matter. And I think there's a huge distinction between you are this, but it doesn't matter to me. And
Yeah.
I don't consider you that. I consider you the same as me. And I think that subtle shift in perspective is vastly... Like, Barden never would have thought to hold his hand. Like,
Yeah.
one, that's not analytical. Two, he understands that he's a synth and he doesn't have that sort of human aspect. Like he would have done something differently in that same scenario. He would have
Sure.
talked him through the stages of grief or fear or whatever. But he wouldn't have shown him that bit of humanity because like Barnes a little fucking kooky, man. And I don't know that he would show anyone else that either.
I think you saying that here too has made me think. I think subconsciously Vince growing up with two of these sort of parental figures having two very different views on Kitchens caused Vince to be in a certain way conflicted on
True.
what he should do.
That flip-flop, yeah. I will say, I think everyone has sort of mentioned a through line for their character to like keep them.
Wait, except for Bub. Bub didn't tell us the inspiration for his characters.
Yeah. I did not. When we were going through that session 0 in the development phase, and Dot was like, "You need to make 2 characters." I was struggling to make 1 character. So when it was like 2, I was like, "Fuck."
Why were you struggling so much?
I didn't really know. I'm always like, historically, I'm the last guy to generate a character because I am the formative value of like, how can I round out the party, right? We had the medical, right? We had Dash, which was corporate douchebag, and then we had was it Vince or it was Vince? It was Vince for that, because it wasn't.
Right.
Wasn't
No, it was-
Desta. No, it was
it was-
Desta. It was Desta.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was
Desta.
Rin, Desta, Kitchens, and Dash, and then it was Barden, Vincent, Ben, Jake, and Eve.
I think that's backwards. Kitchens came later.
No, Kitchens was in the Desta one.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mike
Kitchens-
just said them in
Kitchens
the wrong
Desta.
order.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
In the second group,
Yeah, but because of that, I wanted to kind of build around it. I wanted to see how I could develop a character, and I definitely came up with Ben first, and I didn't really have inspiration. And I was just like up late one night. I was messaging Dot. I was like, I don't have any fucking inspiration to build a character. I don't know what the fuck to do. And she's like, just sit on it, stew on it for a while, and see what you come up with. And like an hour later, I was listening to Highly Suspect, the band Highly Suspect, and I hit one of their albums, and I came across this song called "Hey Little One." And I was like, wow, this song is like, it is about a down and out guy who's literally traded his world so that he could try to make something of his failing life. And I was like, what a way to do that. I'm going to drop the lyrics, or no, I'll just drop the song in case anybody wants to hear it. It's pretty sad, actually. I'll put this in I don't know if I'm going to get.
So please note, this
Party
is
band
also
for
the
this.
time I told the group that we were only allowed 1 synth. And for our 6-episode run, they
Right.
chose 3 synths.
Yeah.
Everybody came to me because I was like, message me privately. I don't want you to let everybody know because it's a stress thing. It's actually part of the mechanics, right? Where if you realize somebody's a synth that you didn't know, you take. So I didn't want anybody to know. So all 3 of you messaged me privately. I want one of my characters to be a synth. I want one of my characters to be a
Yeah.
synth. I want to be a. And so when Bub came to me, I said, look, I'm not going to lie to you. There's a lot of synths running about. Only one of you can survive this season.
Mhm.
Only one of you are going to get to be left standing. And I said, so don't get too attached to your synth because you're on the docket. All three of them were on the docket. And then, of course, Kitchens ended up being the last one. And during the first season, we had not decided you were a David unit.
Correct.
I had kept that secret. I knew you were a David unit.
Correct.
In my notes, I actually made a note that you look like Michael Fassbender. But we did not decide that. I did not inform you of it till season 2.
Yeah. And after we started moving into our second character generation, I just kept listening to that album, and I came across their single, "My Name Is Human," and I started looking at the lyrics, and I was like, "Wow, this is pertinent, if not anything else." And I was thinking back into the Alien verse, the Xenoverse all over again, and he says, "Stand face to face with your gods and find out who you are. Hello, my name is human, and I came down from the stars. Hello, my name is human." And I was like, man, that would be super cool to play a character that is very much self-aware that he's a synth, and he plays up on it like, ha ha ha, finger guns left and right, but he desperately craves life, and he wants to take notes on everything that is about life, and seeing that he had no capacity for understanding that life was actually going to break him because, well, people are fallible. And by the end of it, right, like everyone's like, you had that moment, Ren, where you were like, oh my God, we're fucking doing some really terrible things. We're doing horrible things. To Kitchens, it didn't seem horrible. He was just rising to the level to meet the animosity that was Michael Bishop.
Yeah, for sure.
So that it didn't seem like a bad guy as much as he was like, no, I have to rise to new heights.
Well,
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I knew when I brought Bishop in, I wanted it to be the real Bishop because I didn't want it to be. I wanted Kitchens to have a real person. That's why when Desta shot him and he bled for real, all of you were like, because I wanted that surprise that it was the real Michael Bishop that actually has become the enemy of David.
Yeah. Well, so my kind of comment to that was going to be, it still is questionable because even for Rin, in a very hypocritical sense, is she's killed a lot of people, right, in her line of duty. And as somebody even pointed out in chat, Rin killed that pilot just without even a second thought. I mean, she was going to try to subdue her. And when that didn't work, the only thing that mattered was getting that ship and taking over it. And if she was going to have to kill one person or 5 or 10 or however many, she was going to make sure she got that ship because of the stakes were so high for her internally. She needed to get Vince and Ace off of the monster. Like she had to. She knew it was going to get worse before it got better. So, to answer the question, could she have talked the pilot down? I don't know. That's more of a Dot thing. I think that the roles, they were perfect for the scenario that was in. It was a high stress situation.
There would have been a moment where there
charged.
probably could have been some communication.
Yeah.
And I had potentially planned that depending on Rin's choices, because she could have revealed to you they were carrying packages for Wayland Yutani.
Sure. Yeah.
But that is not how it played out, and that is
no. But and when I had to make that call when the whole pirate situation unfolded, and then she saw the Xeno go into Shakespeare, Rin saw that. Nobody else got to see that because she was out there, and she's like, "I'm out here. I can't help them. I am isolated on this freaking ship, away from everybody else, and I can't save anyone right now. Have to do something." And so Rin's instincts kicked in, and it was like it wasn't in a matter of like whether or not people were going to die. It was like how many people are going to die until I reach my objective, because that's where it was for her. She went full on original training mode, right? Like, and that's what it was. Did Rin feel any mirror moments in the short? Am I misreading that? Any mirror moments in the short fight with the? What would it like? I'm not sure what that.
In the short fight, hang on,
As in between your character and the pirate character?
Oh, was a reflection of self fighting them, right? Like some internal reflection, I think is
not at that time. I'm sure if Rin survived anything, even for any period of time, once they reached the facility, and she achieved her goal, it might be something that she thinks about. But will be completely honest with you guys, and I kind of already mentioned it. Rin's entire personal agenda when she got Vince and Ace safe was to take out Bishop and his
Yep.
research. That was the only thing she would care about after that. So yeah, do I see similarities? I think in some ways, yes, because the pirates are if we go back to the very first season, Rin's on the damn ship, literally protecting the transport of these freaking crates of eggs. Right. So I think that there was a mirror in that literal sense of like, oh, these people are
Oh
carrying
yeah.
things for Wayland Yutani. Great. But she doesn't know that they're doing that. So like out of character, absolutely. I see similarities and I love that. But in character, Ren, no,
Rin
she
had some priorities in that moment. Real
100%.
priorities. Yeah.
Yep. Sorry, go ahead.
Bob, I want to point out something you said, which I think is very interesting, and I think all of us who play quite often fall into that role where you said you were struggling to make a character because usually you're the last person who makes a character and you just fill whatever need of the group there is. But then you mentioned the mechanical roles of the group. And I think that's a very common place to be, especially in like games like D&D and Pathfinder, where like the role of the like the class of the group
to round it out.
Yeah, it has to be. And it's so interesting. I think Zach, you mentioned that this was like one of your first games that wasn't like D&D. And I know, Meta, you play a shitload of games and Dot as well. And I am the same way when it comes to games like D&D and Pathfinder and the like. And I'm still that person when I fill out a role. And I want to see if anyone else falls into this category. But now I focus on the role play role of the group. Like okay, we have a straight man. Okay, we have somebody who's like a smart guy. We have the charisma person, right? Like we have the talker, right? Like if you look at like the A team, right? We have the strong guy. We have the like, and I think for Barden, he's oh God, Christ, I'm having such a blank with names. The private from Aliens 2, played by now I can't remember his name either.
The main
Bill,
guy?
Bill, whatever his name, Bill
The one
Paxton.
that survived. The one that's
No,
you're talking
game
about
over,
Bill
man,
Paxton.
game
Yeah,
over.
Yeah.
He's the comic relief, and that's where Barden is. Barden is the comic relief of the whole thing.
He is funny, but I would actually consider him a trigger point. His character panics everybody else. He's a character that goes in with high stress and is rolling panic rolls the whole time because every time he panics, it forces everybody else around him to panic, right?
Yeah.
Which is what I love.
But he's also in that movie. He's also the one cracking all the jokes. Private Hudson. That's it. Yeah, he's the one. He's the one cracking all the jokes, right? Like he's in his gear and he's like, "I'm fully kitted to kill everyone." Like he's doing like dumb shit in the thing. And he's the most laughs you get. He breaks the tension for the audience.
Break tension. I'll give you that.
And yeah,
Did you ever watch Titan AE?
Yeah, I love
One of
that
my
movie.
favorite movies.
Do you remember Goon?
Yeah, that's Gnome.
That's Barden.
That's
Barden
Gnome
is
in real
Goon.
life.
It's good. Yes.
100%. That's
so
every time
good.
I would see like the Barden moments where he was actually like trying to do
glasses.
science. It was a Goon
He's
moment.
just like in the chair,
Absolutely.
spinning around.
Yeah. Yes.
Absolutely.
I love that. Ironically, my through line for Barden, like what I was like, you gotta be. This is the one thing I'll keep the same about the characters. Like I can kind of keep that level base. Was not Goon. It was way sadder. It was way closer to Milton. And Barden said it a couple times about the needs of the many outweighing the needs of the few, and like killing 200 people on the Covenant to save millions. Barden's depressing through line was always that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few because his needs never mattered. So clearly everyone else is more important. So sacrificing a few people for the bigger picture was never a problem for him because it's been his whole life. So anytime there was a scenario where we're like, yeah, do we kill these 5 people to save 20? He's like, yeah, fuck them. Fuck them. Those people suck. Because that was all he knew for the last 25 years of his life. So that's why anytime he was okay. He was perfectly fine with it. He's like, yeah, fucking you mushroom those people? Fuck them. Fuck 'em.
You all
Light
should
'em up.
know Ace would have been my character had I played.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Ace was the
I can see
character
that.
I would have actually built. She would have been a smidge kookier from extended isolated time and space, but she would have been my long-term character had I actually played in the game
Hell
for
yeah.
sure.
Any other final thoughts to round out this after show
I want to
post-mortem?
know who your
Ooh.
favorite NPC was that you bumped into across all 4
Oh.
seasons. Who was your favorite NPC?
Shit, dude.
I have some old notes that I'm trying to understand.
There
here.
are a
This
couple.
might
I
make
can
us
always
laugh.
remind y'all, but I wanted to see what stuck with you for.
Let me.
And Mike, to answer your question, the David unit you all ran into,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
in fact, was next to last. He was number 6 of 7, with of course your
Yeah.
David being
With
the last one. Yes, he was on his final mission, and that was a transport station. That's why y'all bumped into him. And Bishop was there looking for him.
Oh,
not
mine was
y'all.
the Eve model that was making the mycelium.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, the
Yep.
one that you ran into, the scientist on
Yeah, she was the
Arceon.
hippie
Yeah.
Eve.
Yeah, the hippie Eve. Yeah.
Yeah, she's the only one that was like, you can just stay here.
Mhm.
This could work out. It's gonna be really cool.
Yep. Yeah, chat's got a couple they're tossing out.
Yeah, it's hard to say favorite. Like there's like a different one. The noodle lady, that one was great for me. That was hilarious. It was
Oh,
good scene with the
yeah,
noodles.
so there was the Gravity Time. That was Shakespeare's woman that caused all
Yes.
of the problems on the prison hold. And then there was the woman you all talked to when you went to go pick up to do the pickup for Ace early on.
Yeah.
All of Amanda Ripley's stuff. She was the one that you all had to ask for, like the double greasy meat on a
Yeah.
stick or whatever.
Yeah, it was like a secret code or whatever.
Yeah, secret code number whatever.
Yeah.
Who else did y'all bump into?
I have.
I know who
Go
my
ahead.
favorite NPC was, and I can't remember her name. She was the other Marine that y'all hated so much that Ren wanted.
Oh, my
to
nemesis.
Yeah, your nemesis.
Nemesis?
Octana.
Octana.
Yeah.
Wasn't that Tracy's girlfriend? Wasn't that
Yes.
Yeah.
Fuck her. That girl sucked.
No, it wasn't her.
Marine
No,
sucked.
Tracy's. She was the one that was.
She was the
Oh.
no. She was part of Enzo's crew that showed up to
Yes.
help.
Oh,
y'all.
yeah,
She was part of
yeah,
Enzo's
yeah,
crew.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have some. I found some old NPCs here. So
Okay.
Octana. I have Octana Zentai. I have on Sophie Quill's team.
Oh, yes,
Jolene. A
Jolene.
badass with metal teeth. Chaz,
Yes,
an
Jolene,
asshole
that's right.
Marine.
Oh, Chess, fuck that guy. He died immediately.
Yeah, he died so.
He
He got a
quickly.
bolt. He got a bolt from the ship through his head.
Yeah.
Now, this is from Station Alexandria, I think. I have in my notes with no explanation, Thruple of Doom, Paul Elliott Space Toupee committee member, Carol Banks, and Axel Defector from
Yeah,
Colonial
those are the
Marine.
ones that were on the committee. Y'all really hated the Ace's
Yeah.
assistant.
Oh,
The
yeah.
corporate woman.
Oh,
Y'all really
yeah.
hated her, the one that was watching the door.
We hated a
Yeah.
lot of your NPCs, Doc.
Yeah.
I feel like
I love putting in NPCs y'all dislike because it makes you
Yeah.
do stupid shit. And I'm
Yeah, it really does.
I liked the I think it was the United Americas like general that we spoke
general.
to right at the
Yes.
start
Oh,
of
yeah.
season 2.
Sophie's
The
dad.
start of season 2.
Sophie's
yeah.
dad.
Yeah.
yeah.
So guess who's Enzo's contact?
Ah.
Well, because he was the one that was wanting to go against them, right? And so
And
that makes
he
sense.
sent
a little
y'all
bit.
out to go search for Sophie, remember, because she
Yeah.
had been
Yeah.
missing, and he just happens to be Enzo's Colonial Marine contact is actually Sophie's dad.
Yeah.
So there was a whole lot more with Sophie's story had Sophie stuck around and Marines and things y'all could have done. But you know what? That sounds like a different story for a different day.
Yeah.
Shout out to Shakespeare, even though we never really
Yeah.
ever got to interact with him. He was always sort of the ghost in the story
Yeah.
whose
It's
actions
memory
affected
lives on.
everything else.
He was a very kooky character. Like I said, I based him off of what is that vampire from the original
The underworld
the
dude.
Underworld series?
Yeah,
the
I know
one
exactly
who
who-
keeps all of the
Oh,
archives.
yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff.
Yep.
That is Shakespeare.
That's exactly what I had in my
That
my
is
brain.
him.
Interesting.
Yeah.
He's somewhere between him and the icky guy from the Mummy, the one that carries all.
Oh,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
dude.
He's somewhere.
I
between the two
love
of
that
them.
guy.
Benny.
Yeah,
Benny.
yeah, Benny. Yeah.
Benny.
Oh my god.
Bob, did we get a favorite NPC from you?
Yeah, it was the hippie Eve.
Oh, Hippie Eve.
The fungi Eve.
Sister Agatha.
Yeah,
Sister
Sister
Agatha.
Agatha. I gotta say, like that season 3 was my favorite episode, or favorite season in general, just because like the whole season, like season 1 felt like a slasher flick, and that was great. It was a great introduction. Season 3 felt like start to finish, it felt like Dead Space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It had
Yeah.
this like this oozing element of like space horror that it really clicked with me much more so than some of the others, because like Dead Space, I mean, if you've ever played it at all, it's super spooky and it's where it's just there's something about it. It's very cultish. Yeah, so good. So
There's
have to
each
say-
season I put some very specific themes and pulled inspiration for very specific like sci-fi. Like obviously everything felt alien universe, but I
Yeah.
pulled from very specific pieces of the genre of sci-fi horror for each season. Each season was meant to feel a little like a slasher, and I would say the third season definitely was a little bit more of like not really space opera, but that kind of big scary question.
Yeah.
Right. The big question of like, what does it all mean?
Yeah.
The existential crisis of space really came in season 3.
I was going to say one of the only notes I have for Sister Agatha that I wrote down as Dot was lore dumping all of this stuff about Sister Agatha. So I wrote down, Agatha's father was a monk, founded the order. Her mother was a witch, the Wicked Witch of the West, dog.
She came down in a bubble, Doug.
Yeah, you said her mother was a witch, and so I could not write that down.
Write it down. Yeah.
Anyway,
that
sorry,
is one of
Mike,
my
go ahead.
favorite internetisms. I'm just gonna tangent real quick before I answer the question, because you started this, Zach. There's a
I don't even know what I started.
the internet memes with like she came down in a
Oh.
bubble. There's an internet meme about banana bread at work, and it's one of my favorite things in the world. It brings me joy, and I have taught my son that when I say banana bread at work, dude, any room he's in, he's 3, he just goes hell yeah. And I'm like, fucking peak parenthood right there. That's it. That's my next goal is that when I say, it's Wednesday, my dude, he just goes, from another room. I just want to teach him old memes.
Yeah.
But to answer Dot's question about NPCs, I have to do like 2 comedic NPCs that I think we barely saw at all. And it was just like the existence of them in the periphery and the interaction thereafter was hysterical, which would be Marilyn. At the beginning of season 2, Marilyn got a lot of good laughs at the beginning of season 2. We had a lot of fun with that episode. And then the masseuse on Arceon that realigned his chakras.
Sacral chakra.
Yeah, yeah.
True.
Yeah, she didn't make it. She did.
That's true.
I think
Octana
that-
killed Marilyn, and that's why.
Oh.
that
Well,
was
Octana, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
that
she
bitch.
like destroyed
Octana-
all the work they put in at the colony,
She destroyed
and so
the colony.
Yeah.
so Rin was like, absolutely not. This bitch is going down.
Yeah. Cool. All right, we're at 10 and change. So longer than any of us expected this to go. So any final thoughts to wrap out our post-mortem here as we end officially our Alien series? Cast.
Thank you
crew?
all. Thank you,
Yeah.
Dot, for
Yeah.
Thank you.
this
Thanks for
amazing
trusting
experience.
me. I
Thanks for
remember
putting
Bob
up with
being
us.
like, "How are we gonna play Alien long term?" I was like, "Just
Just the process.
I promise."
I mean,
No,
the
it
book
was great.
hammers, right? It hammers.
Yeah.
It's like, this is designed for like one shot,
Yep.
one shot, kill everyone,
Kill
murder
it,
everything.
Kill it. Yeah.
And I was
And
like,
think,
we're gonna do
that was
we're gonna
actually
season?
something I
Okay.
wrestled a lot with at the end of each season. Was a lot of the YouTube comments were like, "I just expected there to be more death," and really, I always just want more story.
Yeah.
And I'm always
Yeah.
okay not killing you as long as we can keep building the stakes. They got to get bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where your only option is to kamikaze yourself into a planet. Like that was my goal. I needed to get the end to a place where you all felt like you could have impact after 3 seasons, but your deaths weren't slasher film deaths. They were
Yeah.
large scale, impactful deaths. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. So
But at the
I-
same time, like season 2, a lot of Space Marines died. Season
Yeah,
3,
a lot of
a whole space station died. So like there was a lot of it was in the core. The 4 of us kept living, but there were so many people that died in the wake of our existence. So many people died over and over again. Yeah, very much so.
Passing note: be kind to your scents and don't be afraid to make space bands.
That's right. And
That's
don't call
true.
them sets. They're artificial persons.
That's
correct.
That's true. Always
Do
take
yourself a favor
care.
and call them all our official
Mhm.
pods.
Always take care of your sacral chakra, guys.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Always take care of your
Yeah.
sacral chakra.
And go ahead and just take the retirement, guys, because
Yeah.
really,
Yeah, just
just
take
just do
retirement.
it. Just do it.
Yeah.
Also, if they have a southern accent, give them a gun.
Yes.
Yeah, give them a gun. Yeah. Things you learn.
Oh, god damn. All right, friends, that is it for us. Thank you so much for this
Thank you.
multi-year journey through space with us. We couldn't appreciate it more. Truly, this has been a labor of love. We've enjoyed every second of this. And we're glad you did too. We're glad with the outpouring of comments and people starting just now to go back and rewatch all 4 seasons, which is crazy. Binge watching all 4 seasons is absolutely nutty to me. But yeah, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for doing what you do and supporting the channel in whatever ways you do support the channel.
And I'll plan to stick around in the Discord, everybody, and answer questions there. So Michael, leave the alien chat open for a bit. So if a question pops up later, just ping the Discord. I'll get around to it. I promise.
Yeah, all the
we gotta go
archives are
do
still
the,
there.
The after show for the after show. We're
The
gonna-
after show, the after show. That's it from us. We're gonna get out of here. Thank you so much for everything. From all of us to you guys. Bye-bye.